Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a little bit of an unusual panel, and it's one I was very much looking forward to. This is the sci-fi stuff. It's also not software, and it's not hardware only. Modern Meadow and Bolt are rethinking textiles, rethinking fashion. If you haven't heard about this already, Bolt Threads is brewing spider silk. So we may one day wear spider silk pajamas or boxers. It's very compelling. And Modern Meadow is growing leather in a laboratory. And the beauty of this is there's no spider farming involved. And with Modern Meadow, yeah, leather, but it's just from a few cells in the lab or in the factory. So you don't have to raise livestock and kill it to get leather that is exactly like the leather we all want today, buttery, soft, all that goodness. So I'm wondering if one of you, maybe Dan or Andras, let's start with you. Can you tell us just a little bit of the science? What is this biofabrication business? It sounds completely fictional. How does it work?
Sure. Thanks, Laura, and thanks for having me. I had to travel very far to get here, so we're a Brooklyn-based biotech company, so we're delighted that TechCrunch would come to our neighborhood. The technology we practice, we call it biofabrication. And what we really mean by that is building with biology, making real materials and products using biology as the factory. And in our case, we grow leather, and we're able to grow real leather, the same biology, the same protein structure as real traditional leather, but we don't have to kill animals to do that, and we don't have to suffer the waste of huge supply chains and the livestock industry and the environmental impact that has. And
I was surprised to learn that in interviewing you before this, that leather is an industry with so much kind of toxic chemicals involved in the treatment. And
yeah, I mean, first of all, leather is a huge industry, right? We all, I'm sure in this room, if I were to ask, who's wearing leather, almost every hand would go up. It's a $100 billion global industry. It's a long raw material industry. It's a material that we've been working for thousands of years. And yet, what you have is you have animals being raised in the field, transported to slaughter, the hide is removed, and then they're shipped. The hide is shipped usually tens of thousands of miles halfway around the world to be fully processed into leather. And along every step of that, there's a lot of chemistry involved, a lot of waste being involved. It's a very long, very inefficient supply chain. And then at the end of this process, you waste 30, 50% or more of the material because it's got irregular shapes and sizes and scars and insect bites and all that. So there's a lot of inefficiency in the system. And what we do with biofabrication is we basically figure out a way to make fully biological leather from the proteins on up. And we use cells as the factory to make the proteins, and then we figured out a way to take this collagen protein, which is essentially the main protein building block of leather, and convert that collagen into material, and then take it through a tanning process, but one that is much more efficient, uses less chemistry, and is more environmentally sound.
So the sort of implication is if you have a few cells, you could grow like Brontosaurus leather, T-Rex leather, something like that?
I mean, eventually, in the future, one of the things that's quite exciting is that the design and performance space is broad. It's very broad. So you actually don't need to think just in terms of imitation. And that's certainly not our goal as a company, is to make, I can't believe it's not, slaughtered leather. Our goal is to make something that is clearly leather. It has all the aesthetic beauty, the haptic qualities of leather, but it's like no leather you've ever seen. And now whether that is Brontosaurus or T-Rex leather, when that's going to happen, that's certainly not version 1.0. But the technology can ultimately enable tremendous variation in product, and that may be a direction it could go in.
How long until my handbags are made out of this kind of leather? Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, we so we are a biotech company, but so we do have a lot of work we need to do, but we are right now at that part where we're scaling out of R&D and into manufacturing. So we're starting to build out pilot production. And
so it's within years, not decades.
Oh yes, single-digit years. Couple of years we'll be able to show product on the market, which is for biotechnology, that's remarkably fast, because usually it takes a decade plus to develop a new biotech product. But for consumer tech, you're impatient if it takes more than a couple months. So we have to bridge the gap between consumer expectations and biotechnology expectations in the products that we make.
Where else are you with the company? I mean, how many people are you? Do you just have the Brooklyn office?
Yeah. So we moved to New York a couple of years ago. We actually started in the Bay Area and in the Midwest. And then we moved to New York a couple of years ago because we wanted to be closer to our partners and to the design community. That's very important for us. In fact, we're a biotech company that has a chief creative officer who's a world-class fashion designer working alongside our chief technology officer who's a 12-year veteran of DuPont. So it's this really interesting mix of engineering, biology, molecular biologists, physicists working side by side with designers and creatives. And that mix is very present in New York, so it's a great place to be. We have 30 people now, and over the course of the next year, we expect to double. So we're in a very rapid growth phase right now as we build out our manufacturing, as we prototype a lot of products, and we build our brand architecture and marketing.
Got it. And I saw you nodding along when Andras was talking about the sort of timing of biotech. Can you give us an update? Like, am I going to be wearing spider silk pajamas this year?
Ooh. So our technology is very similar to what Andras is talking about. We're very analogous companies, good friends. And Bolt's been about validating our technology and our marketplaces over the last year since we did an announcement in June of 2015. And excited to share two new big pieces of information today.
Okay, what's going on?
So one, we've closed a Series C financing for $50 million.
Oh wow, who's leading that round?
That was led by Jim Kim at Formation 8.
Formation 8.
And we brought in all of our existing investors participated, the guys we love at Foundation Capital who found me and my co-founder in a room full of spiders and still invested. And Founders Fund and everyone else who has been a huge supporter over the years for us.
Okay, congratulations. Do you have fashion companies or apparel makers that you're working with already?
So that brings us to point number 2. We have, are very excited to announce that we talked to a lot of people, and over time we found that we really shared the values and the passion for performance meets sustainability, and we're excited to work with Patagonia in developing products for the future. So we've got a strong partnership there and have the utmost admiration and respect for the team there and working with them.
Okay, so do you know, like, is that going to be in tents and camping gear and the sort of outdoor stuff, or what kind of products are you thinking about with them?
So we're early in the partnership. We're not disclosing exactly what we're doing yet, but we're just excited to work with them, and there'll be a lot of news coming, as well as additional partnerships forthcoming pretty soon.
What do you think? What's the appeal of spider silk to the market? Why is this different than, I don't know, Gore-Tex, Lycra, all these kind of things that are out there and available already?
So the beauty of the technology is that it's not just the spider silk that you know from comic books and movies, stronger than steel, tougher than Kevlar. It turns out to be a platform of technology to build fibers with a wide array of consumer value-added properties. And this really came from the inspiration of the spiders, where an individual spider is making 6 different kinds of silk that have different chemical and mechanical properties.
Okay.
Things that are stretchier than spandex, or things that are very fine and soft, or super strong. And so you can see a platform there where not only can you take inspiration from nature and from the spider, but also this huge range. I mean, my search space is about 10 to the 170 for polymers.
Okay, I'm a little bit of an arachnophobe. Like, just before I ever get around to visiting your office, should I brace myself for a lot of spiders being around, or like, is it just... That
day is come and gone. We no longer have spiders in our office. It used to have, they were about yay big, running loose in the office, 2-meter webs. It was all sorts of fun. Those days are in the past. Now we do everything using modern technology and not a spider to be found.
Okay, I mean, they're cool and I like to learn about them. I don't want to hurt them, Do you guys think it's been harder to raise funding for biotech concepts versus like peers in software and hardware, consumer electronics, all that?
I mean, Dan just closed a big round, so congratulations. That's awesome.
It's possible.
I would say, in certain respects, yes, and in certain respects, no. What benefits you is that there's not a lot of companies doing what we do. So we stand out, and it's memorable, and you actually are able to get access to some incredible investors. And both of our companies are backed by incredible investors.
Remind us who's invested in Modern Meadow?
So we had our early backers were Artis Ventures. They just sold StemCentrix to AbbVie for $10.2 billion. So that was like an amazing venture-backed outcome, and just really terrific venture firm. Iconic Capital in the Bay Area. They're also an early investor. And then our Series A was led by Horizons Ventures. They're a fantastic firm. It's Mr. Li Ka-shing's venture fund. He's one of the wealthiest guys in Asia, and just an incredibly supportive group. And then I don't have an announcement to make just yet, but you'll be among the first to know, Laura.
Okay, thank you.
So we both have a great mix of investors, and I would say that because of what we're doing, you get good access. What you do have to explain, however, is that there have been multiple cycles of biology doing things beyond medicine. And even in medicine, biology has had great, moments of great expectation in certain fields that have not fully lived up to it, and some that have. What we do is very different, completely different than what happened in biofuels. There's some similar toolkits that we can leverage, but it's a very, very different business model and very different target products that we make. And when we do talk to investors, it's very, the sophisticated ones understand that, oh, wait a minute, you're making a branded, high-value material that's going to be sold in consumer products, that play in a completely different part of the market than a fuel additive or some kind of invisible chemical ingredient, some kind of commodity product.
You're talking about like polyester or something there?
Polyester, or there's been a lot of innovation in biomanufacturing to make ingredients, to make new kinds of food ingredients, to make new kinds of flavor, fragrance, colorants, etc.
So you had to like educate the investors somewhat.
Correct.
Since you have this partnership with Patagonia, it sounds like the fashion or apparel makers are like ready to look at this. Are there like regulatory hurdles that are going to make it hard to scale this up and get the materials out into the market? I mean, these are new materials. What are you facing there?
So in comparison to where most biotech happens, where you work with the FDA for a very long period of time to get a pharmaceutical approved,
right.
We have to work with the EPA for doing an engineered microbe and growing that in a contained system, as well as for us, kind of interesting piece of regulatory is working with the FTC. So we all take it for granted,
FTC,
but
okay.
Federal Trade Commission, if you look at the back of your apparel on the generic tag, there's some content, 70% cotton, 10% spandex, something like that. We have to comply with that. We have a new fiber, and we have to work on getting that generic care label. But that's a very different time scale, months.
Do you know the name already? Like, what are you going to call this?
We'll tell you pretty soon.
Okay, so you're still working on the sort of the right
finishing
brand?
it up.
The beauty of the regulatory is, like, unlike medical products, the FDA approval process for a new medical product can take long time. Here we're talking about processes that are fundamentally more environmentally sustainable.
Yes.
And so EPA support is actually, it's not challenging, it's just a process. And then the FTC question is really just around what will you call it?
Do you know what you're going to call your materials yet?
We're working on it.
Okay.
So I can tell you that it's not going to be called Modern Meadow. That's the name of our company. Our materials, what we call it, is a process that we're going through right now.
We should like have a naming competition
and very
here with all
likely
these creative minds.
Very likely it's not going to be one material for everything or one name for everything,
right.
Because we're developing leather materials for different applications, different spaces. What we call our materials that in the performance space for sport will probably be different than what we call it in luxury or furniture or automotive. So that brand architecture is being developed right now.
We talked about the environmental intensity of leather a little bit. Is silk like that?
Yeah, I think anytime you look at a protein-based fiber, so these are your silks, your wools, your cashmeres, your mohairs, they're pretty intensive processes in terms of, from an energetic standpoint. You're growing an organism to then collect some small fraction of it to then make the product. That's one of the things we really got passionate about with the business, was this idea that you can have something that's vastly more sustainable while also as good or better performance as anything else on the market. And that's a pairing that rarely comes around.
You talk about these other fibers. Does your technology is it going to yield more than spider silk? What types of fibers, if yes?
It's a pretty broad platform. So we can make a generic protein at scale, at a cost-effective way for consumer products. All those other fibers are made of keratin, another protein. Andras' protein collagen for making leather. Silk is another protein. They're all within the platform and use the same technology that we've built over the last many years to scale up cost-effectively.
Okay, does this involve a lot of software? Like, why are the tech investors that we usually see backing apps and software getting interested in this besides the kind of cool sci-fi weirdness of it?
Biology's really undergone a transformation in the last 10 years to become more numerically based and a more engineering science. I think of my high school biology class where we went out and picked up some leaves and looked for what was counting organisms that were growing in there. Now we can build quantitative modeling around how effectively genes express, cells grow, processes run. And I think that people see that as an application of information technology moving into biology where it becomes an information science.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of the passion comes there.
Both of our companies generate a tremendous amount of data, right?
Yes.
So there's a lot of information to analyze to be able to inform how your experiments evolve. So the bioinformatics aspect of it is very interesting. Life itself is data. So we've come to have an understanding of that that's far more sophisticated than it was a decade ago. But I'd say the relevance to this audience is that both of us are creating companies that have, there's a lot of mechanical engineering, there's a lot of automation involved in our companies, there's a lot of software and tools that tie it all together. So there's really, it's an incredibly interdisciplinary environment. To create a company that can deliver this full stack of technical capabilities to bring new materials and new products to market.
What kind of machinery, when you're referencing the automation, can you give us like a look into the lab or the factory?
I mean, if you were to walk through either of our labs, you'd see a whole bunch of equipment that allows us to do work at the cellular level, right? To be able to tune our cells to be able to do what we want them to do. I'm
picturing a bunch of robots like running around stirring beakers or something.
That's exactly right.
Oh, it is.
So
okay.
If you come walk through our facility, you find Andras has got it right. There's this weird stack of incredibly diverse talents and equipment. We've got everything from molecular biologists to chemical engineers to fashion designers going across this entire stack. It's a really interesting blend of people. And you look across there, and it's everything from robots that handle small volumes of liquids or look at fluorescence in cells and microscopes through to large-scale fermentation and fiber spinning for us.
Is the fashion world, we've seen a lot of consumer electronics wearables kind of implementations. I wrote about Everpurse and Kate Spade, or we've seen Rebecca Minkoff do things with electronics. Is the fashion world coming around to check out what's happening in biotech yet? Are you connecting with like couture designers and mainstream designers and designers of streetwear?
You're looking at the addressable market for these kinds of technologies right now. There's about 2 of us. There's a lot of interest. It's a very hard science. I mean, we're the first to admit that we don't know everything about what we're doing and what we're learning. It's a part of doing the scientific process. But when you do that, the breakthroughs are big, lasting, and meaningful. And people are very excited about that.
I mean, Laura, I would say the answer is yes. We haven't been a stealth company for a number of years. We gave a TED Talk. Our chief creative officer gave a TED Talk 4 years ago on the topic of using biology to design new materials. So there's been awareness of what we've been doing, and we've been approached by over 100 different brands looking to work with our leather in a new way. Now, obviously, as a small company that's rapidly growing, we cannot work with 100 different partners at once. So we have to be, both of us, I think we have to be very selective about who we work with, and you want to make sure that you identify those partners that are truly world-class in terms of their reputation for design, quality, performance, and their genuine interest in sustainability. Right? And so for us, that's been a filter for all of our collaborations, and we have some incredible partners that we're working with, just like you. It's an education for them, and it's an education for us. But it's industries coming together that have not really come together like this in the past, and that's very exciting.
We're down to the wire, and I have one last question. What are you going to do with that $50 million Series C? Like, what do you do with the funding?
Yeah, so we're in the process of scaling up. We have built a lot of the supply chain around the technology. This is about bringing volume up and bringing products to market. And whole stack all the way to consumers selling apparel to people, as well as working with our partners. So it's really about continuing to chip away those challenges and bring something meaningful and new to the marketplace.
Okay, I thank you so much for spending your time with us. I know you're just around the corner, but I also know how busy you are.
Thanks for having us.
Look forward to wearing your products eventually.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.